Imagine sitting on a freezing New England roof on Halloween night.
Okay, setting the scene.
Right. So you're looking down, and the street below is just packed with kids in bright costumes. Parents are chatting, boom boxes are playing. It's a whole block party.
Sounds like a pretty standard, idyllic suburban Halloween.
Exactly. But then you look across the street, and a man steps out onto his own roof, and he slips a red clown nose onto his
Which
face.
is already incredibly unsettling.
So unsettling. He reaches down to this rigged lever, pulls it, and instantly a massive explosion rocks the street.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and thousands of gallons of freezing ocean water are just unleashed directly into this crowd of trick-or-treaters.
It is just the ultimate engineered catastrophe. Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are plunging into this wildly vivid narrative titled The Deluge at Waterhouse.
We really are taking you straight into the heart of this bizarre story. It's about a picturesque coastal town whose highly curated, candy-coated Halloween was just completely hijacked.
Hijacked by a Hollywood-level man-made disaster. It's
Mhm.
fascinating.
It really is. What we're exploring for you today is that very fragile illusion of safety we all build around ourselves. I mean, think about your own neighborhood.
Right, you might have, a neighborhood watch or a homeowners association.
A Ring camera on literally every single porch. You think you've controlled for every single variable. But this story is about what happens when an unknown variable just forces its way in.
And totally shatters that protective bubble. It serves as this masterclass in narrative tension. We're going to experience this story exactly as it unfolded for the residents.
Yeah, examining not just the physical disaster itself, but the psychology of suburban spectacle.
And that collision between manufactured fear and genuine terror.
Exactly. But to understand how completely this town's reality was shattered, we have to look at the incredibly stagnant, predictable foundation they had built first.
The baseline, right? The epicenter of the story is this house at the very top of the hill.
Yeah, and for years it was owned by this couple known as the Packers. The source text basically paints the Packers as the human equivalent of a warm bowl of oatmeal.
That is the perfect description. They were so harmless.
Right. I mean, they grew basil right next to wild blueberries in the yard. They kept hummingbird feeders dangling from their cedar-shingled porch.
And they lined their railings with those Crayola-colored old lobster buoys. They were just a baseline of absolute predictability.
Totally. The text even details how neighbors could track their morning routine purely by sound.
Oh, like the stretch of their screen door spring.
Yes. The stretch of the spring, the smack of their flip-flops as they walk downhill to the country club pool.
The swoosh of their long swim parkas. They represent a community that is completely at ease with its own rhythms.
And they were, like, terrified of risk. Mrs. Packer had broken her hip twice, so they fled to Florida every winter just to avoid the ice.
Sensible, but very boring.
Super boring. When they finally moved away for good, the neighborhood kids didn't really care. The Packers were the house that handed out peppermint patties on Halloween.
Nice, but entirely devoid of excitement.
Ah.
But their departure leaves this huge vacuum at the most elevated, physically dominant point in the neighborhood.
Right at the top of the hill. And what fills that vacuum is the absolute antithesis of the Packers.
Cue the ominous music.
Seriously. A moving truck arrives, packed with completely unlabeled boxes, and out steps the new owner. He's this large man with dark facial hair and tinted glasses.
No kids, no visible family.
None. And he immediately starts behaving in ways that practically weaponize the town's curiosity. I mean, he takes these heavy, grommeted sound blankets.
The kind you use in professional recording studios, right?
Yeah, exactly those. He seals them with clear tape and hangs them over all of his front windows.
Which is wild. He creates a literal and metaphorical black box. By obstructing light and sound, he's intentionally blinding a community that relies on casual surveillance to feel secure.
That's a great point. And when you deny an insular group access to information, they don't just ignore it.
No, they actively manufacture their own reality to fill the void.
Which brings us to the most incredible vehicle for that manufactured reality. Virginia.
Oh, Virginia. She is a fantastic character study.
She is the neighborhood's unofficial mayor, or, at least she desperately tries to be. The text gives us this hilariously specific detail about her.
The bookstore detail.
Yes, she volunteers at the local bookstore, but management officially banned her from giving customers book recommendations.
Wait, really? Why?
Because of her, quote, political and erotic leanings.
That is just brilliant writing. She embodies the busybody archetype perfectly.
Hmm.
She clearly has excessive free time and a deep psychological need to insert herself into the center of the community narrative.
Oh, 100%. I mean, when the city removed a dead maple tree at the end of the street and installed a new traffic circle, Virginia hit reply all to the neighborhood email thread.
Of course she used reply all.
She demanded a plan for this new gray hole in the asphalt. People suggested like a pet cemetery or a kid's garden.
And let me guess, she ignored everyone.
She ignored them all, planted geraniums in the circle herself, and then emailed everyone the receipt asking for reimbursement.
Wow. The audacity. She simply has to control the environment.
Right.
So when the man on the hill shuts out the neighborhood, she naturally loses her mind.
Oh, completely. Neighbors are leaving homemade sourdough breads and cobblers on his porch. He just ignores them.
And what happens to the food?
The text actually notes the hummingbirds end up eating the baked berries out of the welcome gifts.
Look, that's such a great image.
Yeah.
Instead of baked goods, he leaves red and white Chinese takeout cartons and disposable chopsticks on the welcome mat.
Right, and he only ever opens the door to sign for DHL packages. So Virginia leverages her connection with a woman named Phyllis.
The real estate agent, right?
Yeah, Phyllis handled the transaction. Virginia uses her to dig up the man's backstory. But Virginia is so sloppy with the details.
What did she get wrong?
She runs around whispering about this big Hollywood guy, Mr. Waters. She adds an S to his name, but his name is just Mr. Water. Singular.
The irony is pretty sharp there, considering what happens later. But the rumor mill does actually extract the core truth, right?
It does. Mr. Water is a disgraced Hollywood special effects master, an Oscar winner who was fired and entirely shut out by his studio.
And there's that one quote he said to the real estate agent.
Oh, yeah. He told her that this sleepy, predictable New England town reminded him of a movie set.
That line gives me chills.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a movie set.
It's so ominous. But what blows my mind is that the town just kind of, well, gets over it. Summer fades, the basil plants die off, the tourists leave.
The town goes right back to its insular coastal routines, and Mr. Water just fades into the background noise.
Exactly. And this return to complacency is vital to the story's structure. The town lulls itself back to sleep.
Which sets the stage beautifully for October. Because in a place like this, October isn't just a month, right? It's a profound psychological shift.
Yes. The source text describes October as having this escalating, intoxicating effect. The town turns into this dewy, watercolored New England fever dream.
I can almost smell it, thick with anticipation.
And the smell of cinnamon and squash cooking in cast iron pans. The local arts committee even gets the lighthouse keepers to put a piece of orange film over the main bulb.
So at night, the entire coastline is washed in this eerie, artificial orange haze. It is a masterfully coordinated performance of Americana.
It really is.
They're engaging in what we might call a bought-in jubilee. The entire community is participating in the creation of a highly controlled spectacle.
It is exactly like living inside a child-proof theme park. I mean, on Halloween Day, the schools hold morning parades so parents can photograph costumes at peak pristineness.
And then there's Leonard time.
Oh, dinner time. That weird late afternoon meal where parents stuff their kids with pizza and apples at designated pre-party homes.
Essentially fueling them up before releasing them onto the streets. Everyone plays a designated role in this theater.
They do. Mr. Green sedates the traffic by putting orange cones in the street. The reeds blanket their front lawn in fog using dry ice.
It's so structured.
Oh, there's even an overzealous family that constructs a full mud run obstacle course on their property. It has an inflatable start and finished arch where kids have to literally bear crawl to earn their candy.
That is intense for a neighborhood Halloween. What about the costumes?
The costumes are incredible. Fat baby pumpkins, wizards drowning in scarves, highly flammable princess gowns.
Classic.
And the narrator points out one kid who dressed as Diane Keaton in chunky frames. They noted that this specific costume won over all the New England moms and gays that night.
Huh. That highlights the specific flavor of this community's desire for fear. They want the thrill of Halloween, but they want it completely sanitized.
Exactly. They want predictable scares, an inflatable monster, some fog from a fog machine.
So when Mr. Water finally emerges in mid-October and wraps his entire property in shiny caution tape, the neighborhood completely misreads the room.
They totally do. The teenagers assume he's building a professional-grade haunted house. They think, oh, the Hollywood effects guy is going to show us up.
All right, they think he's playing their game. They map their own desire for entertainment onto his isolation.
They assume his black box is just the curtain waiting to be raised for their amusement. Which brings us to the collision point.
Halloween night.
Yes. The streets are just a cacophony of screeching kids, slamming screen doors, boomboxes blasting music. But as the night wears on, the kids exhaust the normal houses.
So the narrative essentially funnels the entire neighborhood toward that one mysterious property at the top of the hill.
Exactly, sitting silently behind its caution tape. And the trigger for the disaster is incredibly simple. It just requires a brave participant to break the tension.
And who is the brave participant?
A kid named Colby Jenkins, dressed as a ninja. He leads a huddle of tiny trick-or-treaters up to Mr. Waters' door. Colby breaks character, yells trick or treat, and presses the doorbell.
And at this exact moment, the source text introduces a profound psychological concept, the two-explosion rule.
Tell us about that.
The narrator observes that if you want to genuinely scare someone, you cannot rely on just one surprise.
Right, because the moment Colby hits that bell, a massive blast rocks the street. The ground shakes, a nearby car alarm starts blaring, and every window in the Waterhouse shatters simultaneously.
But going back to the psychology, the crowd doesn't panic immediately, do they?
They don't. The adults actually run toward the house. They think it's a stunt gone wrong. They're thinking, is this part of the show?
Right, the first explosion leaves a dam of uncertainty intact.
Exactly. Two neighborhood dads, one in a football jersey, another in full drag push upstream through the kids. They run to the shattered house to see if Mr. Water is hurt.
And what do they find?
They hear a deep structural rumbling and the sound of gushing water inside.
But it takes the second explosion to break that psychological dam.
And the second blast is catastrophic. It quakes beneath the asphalt. It shakes the trees so violently that pine cones and dead leaves cascade down onto the street.
That is when the doubt vanishes.
That is when the deluge begins. Now, mechanically, you have to wonder, how does a man flood a neighborhood on a hill?
Well, the text suggests Mr. Water used his special effects background to orchestrate a massive, gravity-fed practical effect.
Over the preceding weeks, right?
Yeah, he utilized a pump system connected to the ocean to pull an immense volume of seawater up into his backyard pool. By rigging a mechanical lever system to release that stored volume all at once, he weaponized the elevation of his property.
Because the water had nowhere to go but down, the visual is pure cinematic horror. The front screen door frame starts flapping wildly, pushed open by sheer hydrostatic pressure.
And it just gives way.
Yeah. Thousands of gallons of freezing ocean water burst out of the door, pour through the shattered windows, seeping right through those heavy sound blankets, and tear down the hill.
Unbelievable.
We get this breathless account from a kid named Jamie Murphy, who was dressed as a hand-painted tin of anchovies.
A tin of anchovies, that's so specific.
I know, right? Jamie compares the fast torrential wave directly to the flood riot at Universal Studios. Jamie says, "We heard the first loud boom, and some of us noticed water glugging out from inside, and it literally reminded me of Universal Studios."
But then the second blast hits.
Yeah, Jamie goes on to say, and then the second bomb happened, and it was really happening. Just a huge bursting torrential wave from that house, and no idea how or why our street was drowning.
It is a complete inversion of their safe manufactured Halloween. Mr. Water delivered the Hollywood experience they subconsciously wanted, but he removed all the safety rails.
But let me challenge that for a second. The text implies this was his final, redemptive, board-breaking blockbuster. It frames it as an act of artistic ego.
Proving he can still execute a massive practical effect without a studio budget.
Exactly. But if you trap an entire neighborhood of children in a freezing tidal wave, at what point does spectacle just become a cover for pure malice? Isn't it just a targeted attack against a community he clearly despised?
It's a fair challenge, for sure. The destruction is indiscriminate, which definitely feels malicious, but the source frames his motivation through the lens of a disgraced artist.
So treating them like props.
Pretty much. The neighbors, in his mind, are just extras on his set. They aren't the primary target. They are the collateral damage of his hubris.
He didn't flood the street to hurt Virginia or Colby Jenkins.
Right. He flooded the street because the slope of the hill and the quiet of the town provided the perfect canvas for his medium.
And the canvas is completely wiped clean. The physical destruction is surreal. The water acts as a great equalizer, stripping away the entire curated veneer of the town.
What gets swept away?
The lightest, most synthetic items go first. Flocks of plastic pumpkins, fairy wands, lightsabers. The reed's dry ice gets caught in the current and creates this massive rolling cloud of carbon dioxide fog along the tree line.
It is such a bizarre juxtaposition. the mundane artifacts of suburbia colliding with the raw force of the ocean.
Remember Virginia's prized geraniums in the traffic circle, utterly
Yeah.
decimated, the water overtops the curbs?
And the power goes out, right?
Yeah, the power on the entire block fails, so the boom boxes and the inflatable archway fans just die in an instant. The text points out these incredibly stark, absurd details: pizza boxes and shampoo bottles floating down the road.
And wasn't there something from Virginia's house?
Oh, yes. Specifically, a couple of thick dildos bobbing to the surface, having been washed right out of Virginia's bedroom drawer.
The flood literally unearths the hidden, private realities of the neighborhood. With the power out, the scene becomes primal.
The only illumination is the recurring artificial orange beam of the lighthouse cutting through the dark.
And the narrator notes that the sound of the freezing, rushing water was somehow louder than the screaming parents desperately trying to grab their children.
Which brings us to the framing of this entire narrative. Because we haven't been experiencing this flood from the street level,
No, we haven't.
the narrator of this story is actually sitting high up on the roof of a house across the street, dressed as a ghost, watching the entire disaster unfold.
A detached observer positioned above the chaos.
Yes, and a highly altered one. The narrator admits to going up on the roof to get high, seeking a way to, quote, quiet the noise of my life down inside.
So we are seeing this through the eyes of someone stoned, sitting on a roof in a ghost costume.
Watching a man-made tidal wave erase the neighborhood, and because the narrator is elevated, they get a god's eye view of the man behind the curtain.
The narrator sees Mr. Water on his own roof, orchestrating the event.
Right before the second explosion, the narrator looks across the street. Mr. Water is standing on his roof. He has tucked his tinted glasses into his collar. He reaches down to pull the lever rigged to his backyard pool, and he is wearing a red clown nose.
That detail the clown knows is everything. It is a profound acknowledgement of the absurdity of his action.
He knows what he's doing.
Absolutely. He knows he is putting on a show. He is the master of ceremonies in a circus of his own making.
But the craziest part, he doesn't film it. He is a master of Hollywood spectacle. He spends months engineering this flawless, multi-million-dollar practical effect, and he just watches it with his naked eyes. Wow.
He waits for the water levels to drop, slips through a secret door he cut into his boxwood hedges, and vanishes.
He built a temporary, destructive masterpiece purely to experience it in real time. And the community is just left to pick up the shattered pieces of their snow globe.
Miraculously, no one was killed. Some of the smaller children were hospitalized overnight just to monitor for secondary drowning.
And the media arrived pretty quickly, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. The news crews descend on the town the next day. The reporter goes live in HD, and you can still see the faint, washed-out cat whisker makeup on her cheeks from the night before.
That's such a striking image. The mundane reality reasserts itself almost immediately, doesn't it?
It really does. Because they live on the coast, most residents had flood insurance that covered the damage. A few families were financially ruined and ended up joining the Packers down in Florida.
And how does the city respond to this massive, traumatic event?
They plant a tree in the traffic circle. An act of pure municipal pity dropped right into the dirt where Virginia's geraniums used to be. If we synthesize all these threads, this narrative tells a brilliant story about a profound disconnect.
How so?
Well, you have an insular town thirsty for seasonal spookiness, a safe, controlled thrill. And that thirst was answered by an outsider who traded their suburban make-believe for terrifying reality.
He brought the blockbuster to the cul-de-sac.
Exactly. They wanted a Hollywood Halloween, and they got the uncut, R-rated director's edition.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought about that unrecorded spectacle. Mr. Water didn't record his masterpiece. He built a massive, destructive practical effect just to watch it happen live in a clown nose.
Completely unaware that he, too, was being watched by a ghost on a neighboring roof.
Exactly. It really asks the question, in a world obsessed with capturing and broadcasting every single moment, what does it mean to create a spectacle entirely for an audience of one?
A chilling thought to leave on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.